Rain fell over the small town of Brookvale like thin silver threads, whispering against rooftops and car windshields. Inside a small auto garage near the edge of town, Evan worked beneath the hood of an old pickup truck. His hands were rough and marked with grease, and his shirt smelled faintly of motor oil and soap. He did not mind the quiet of the rain or the hum of the single radio in the corner. He liked work that made sense. When a car came in broken and left running smooth, he felt something settle right inside him. The world outside his garage felt far away. Brookvale was not the kind of town that chased new things. The same people stopped by every week, always talking about weather, fishing, or football. Evan had grown used to it. He did not think much would ever change for him. He was tightening a bolt when the sound of tires crunching on wet gravel made him look up. A black car rolled into the driveway, shining even under the dull gray sky. It was a brand new model he had only seen in magazines. The door opened, and a woman stepped out. She wore a beige coat that looked expensive but simple, and her shoes were not made for muddy ground. She pulled her hood tighter to shield her hair from the drizzle, and as she approached, Evan noticed her eyes first. They were the kind of eyes that had seen a lot, yet kept their calmness like still water. "Afternoon," she said, her voice warm but a little tired. "Is this your shop?" Evan wiped his hands on a rag and nodded. "Yeah, ma'am. Evans Auto. Can I help you?" She smiled quickly, almost shy. "My name's Claire. My car has been making a strange noise since I left the city this morning. Could you take a look?" "Sure thing," he said. Leaned under the hood, checking belts and wires while Claire stood nearby, her arms folded, eyes wandering over the tools and shelves stacked with spare parts. Everything here was plain, honest, and dusty, a sharp contrast to whatever world she had come from. After a few minutes, he straightened up. "Looks like you just need a belt replacement, easy fix, and get that done today if you don't mind waiting a bit." She nodded and gave a small sigh of relief. "I don't mind waiting. Honestly, I needed a break from the drive anyway." Evan pointed toward the small waiting area with a worn-out couch and an old coffee machine. "You can sit inside if you like. It's warmer in there." Claire smiled again. But instead of walking to the waiting area, she stayed by the car, watching him work. Something about his quiet focus fascinated her. He didn't talk much, but his movements were steady, sure, and patient, like he had spent years perfecting them. "So do you get many new cars like this out here?" she asked. "Not really," he replied. "Most folks drive trucks or old sedans. Yours might be the fanciest one that's ever parked here." She laughed softly. "I suppose I should take that as a compliment." He grinned, glancing up at her. "It is." For a while, there was only the sound of light rain and the clink of his tools. Claire leaned against the car, feeling something she hadn't felt in months. The city was loud, filled with meetings, calls, and people who looked at her as a position, not a person. Here, in a little town under the rain, a stranger talked to her without wanting anything. It was strange, but pleasant. When the repair was done, Evan wiped his hands again and straightened up. "You're good to go now. I should stop the noise." She pulled out her purse, but he shook his head. "No rush on payment. You can settle it later if you're in a hurry." "I'm not in a hurry," she said. She seemed to hesitate a moment, then asked in a calm tone, "Evan, do you have plans for the weekend?" He blinked, surprised. "Not really. Why?" Her lips curved a little. "I have a company event at a lakeside resort. I could use some company." "Will you be my date for the weekend?" Evan stared at her, unsure if she was joking. "You're serious?" "I wouldn't ask if I wasn't," she replied. He rubbed the back of his neck, looking bewildered. "I'm just a mechanic. I don't think I'd fit in with your crowd." "You fix things," she said simply. "Maybe my weekend needs someone who can fix the mood." There was a playful kindness in her voice that made it hard for him to refuse. After a long pause, he smiled a little. "All right, why not? I'll be your date for the weekend." Claire's face brightened, as if the rain itself had turned to sunlight. "Good pick-me-up Friday morning?" He nodded, still amazed at what had just happened. When her car drove away, her taillights faded down the road, leaving Evan standing in the soft mist of rain, wondering how a normal day had suddenly taken such a turn. They looked at the oil-stained floor, then at his reflection in the window. Somewhere deep inside his quiet world, something new had begun to stir. Evan had never been to a place like the lakeside resort. The buildings were tall and white, with glass windows that reflected the sunlight and the blue water below. The air smelled of pine trees and fresh paint. He stood in the parking lot wearing his best shirt, one that still had a faint mark of oil no matter how many times he washed it. Around him, people walked in fine clothes, their shoes clicking on the smooth ground. He felt out of place, but tried not to show it. Claire met him near the entrance. She wore a soft blue dress and a light smile that made everything else fade for a moment. "You made it," she said. "Wouldn't miss it," Evan replied, though he still wasn't exactly sure what he had gotten himself into. Inside, the lobby looked like something from a dream. A fountain trickled quietly in the center, while a man at the desk greeted guests with practiced warmth. Claire led him through the hall, introducing him to a few people. They smiled and shook his hand, but he could tell they were curious about who he was. "You must be the man Claire has been talking about," said one woman. I did not know she had such interesting friends. Evan just nodded, trying to remain polite, while feeling more like a guest from another planet. Claire noticed his discomfort and touched his arm lightly. "Come on," she said softly. "Let's get some air." They stepped outside to a wooden deck that looked over the lake. The water shimmered under the sun, quiet and endless. "This place feels too fancy for me," Evan said. "I keep waiting for someone to tell me I don't belong." Claire turned toward him. "You belong wherever you decide to be. People here may have money, but that doesn't make them better than anyone." He looked at her, seeing sincerity in her eyes. "You talk like you know that from experience." "I do," she said simply, but she did not explain. The weekend moved slowly at first. There were meetings in the morning and dinners in the evening. Claire introduced Evan as her friend, and though people whispered now and then, she paid them no mind. Evan listened and smiled and tried to fit in, but sometimes his simple answers made others blink in confusion, yet he never pretended to be someone else. When a man at the dinner table laughed about expensive cars, Evan smiled and said he preferred the kind that actually worked. That made Claire laugh more than she had in months. After dinner, they walked along the lake path, away from the bright lights of the resort. The night was quiet except for the sound of crickets. Claire took off her heels and walked barefoot on the cool grass. "I haven't done that since I was a kid," she said, laughing quietly. "You should do it more often," he replied. "Feels good to forget the grown-up stuff once in a while." She nodded. "You make it sound easy? How do you stay so calm about life?" Evan thought for a moment. "I guess I spend most of my time fixing broken things. It teaches you patience. You stop rushing for what isn't ready." She looked at him closely, as if his words carried some hidden wisdom. For a long moment, neither spoke. The moonlight touched her hair, and Evan realized how beautiful she looked standing there, her laughter echoing softly across the water. The next morning came with more events. Claire had to attend a brunch with a few businessmen, and she brought Evan along. He helped her carry a few boxes and waited near the side while she spoke. Her tone was different there, firm and confident. He could see another Claire, one who led people and made tough decisions. But when their eyes met across the room, she smiled in the same gentle way she had back in the garage. Later that day, they escaped to a small pier. Claire kicked her legs over the side while Evan handed her a bottle of lemonade from a cooler. "I needed this break," she said. "I didn't realize how tired I was until now." Evan took a sip and nodded. "Everyone gets tired when they forget to live a little." "You really think so?" "Work's important, but it can't be everything." She looked out over the water, thoughtful. "You're right. Sometimes I feel like I spend all my time fighting to prove myself. I forget what it means to just be me." "It seems like you found a bit of yourself this weekend," he said quietly. She turned her head to him, smiling. "Maybe I have. Maybe you're part of the reason." He felt a warmth he hadn't known before. Something simple and deep hovered between them. Claire's hand rested near his, and for a moment they both sat silent, watching the ripples on the lake. That evening, under the soft glow of lanterns, there was a small dance. Claire asked him to join her. Evan laughed awkwardly, saying he didn't know how, but she insisted. He stepped on her foot once, then again, and she laughed so much that others looked over and smiled too. He realized that even in a place full of wealth and sparkle, it was her laughter that shined the brightest. By the time the night ended, Evan no longer cared about being out of place. He knew he had given her something she hadn't felt in a long time. And as they walked back toward the resort, their hands brushed lightly, neither pulling away. It was simple, quiet, and real. In that quietness, something true began to grow, though neither of them yet saw how deep it would go. The morning sun came bright over the lake, turning the water gold. Evan woke early and walked outside, breathing in the quiet air. He still could not believe he was there. The weekend had already felt like a small dream. Claire had shown him more beauty in 2 days than he had seen in years. They had talked late into the night about small things like favorite foods and movies, and about bigger things like work and growing up. She listened with true interest when he spoke about his life in the garage. He had never met someone who made every word feel worth saying. When he reached the deck, he saw Claire sitting by herself with a cup of coffee. She looked peaceful, watching the lake with a soft gaze. But when she noticed him, she straightened and smiled. "Good morning, Evan," she said. "Morning," he replied. "You're up early." "I couldn't sleep," she said. "Too much on my mind." He sat beside her. "Work," she hesitated. "Always work." "No. I wish I could leave it behind for a few days." Evan laughed gently. "You could try. Nobody here would find you. If only it were that simple," she said with a sigh. A moment later, her phone rang. She frowned slightly before answering it. Her voice turned firm and serious. Evan listened without meaning to. She spoke about deadlines, investors, and something about market shares. The words sounded sharp and heavy. When she hung up, she looked tired again. "Sorry about that," she said quickly. "Just some business." Evan nodded but stayed quiet. Something about her tone stirred a question inside him. The way people at the resort treated her with extra care. The way she spoke on that call. She did not seem like someone running small errands or mid-level work. She sounded like someone who made the big decisions. It was not until the afternoon that he found out the truth. Claire had invited him to join her at a lunch event. They met in a wide hall with glass walls and neatly set tables. People in suits and dresses walked around carrying files and tablets. At the far end, a large poster displayed a company logo that looked familiar. It was the same symbol that appeared on the glossy car magazines Evan kept at the garage. A man standing near him whispered to another guest, "The CEO herself is here today. It's quite rare for her to attend personally." Evan's breath caught. He looked toward Claire, who was now speaking to the group with calm confidence. The people listened closely, nodding at her every word. It was clear she was the one they all looked up to. He stood frozen, his stomach tight. She had told him nothing. For a moment, anger and confusion mixed together inside him. He felt foolish. The woman he had thought of as just a kind stranger was actually one of the most powerful people in the room. After the meeting ended, Claire came back to him as if nothing had changed. "Sorry to keep you waiting," she said. "It took longer than I thought." Evan forced a smile. "So you're the CEO?" Her eyes widened. "You heard I did," he said quietly. "Funny, you didn't think to mention that before." She set her coffee cup down, her voice low. "I didn't know how to tell you. People always look at me differently once they know." "You mean like I'm supposed to look at you now?" he said. Claire shook her head. "No, that's what I was trying to avoid. I didn't want to lose what we had this weekend. I just wanted to feel normal for once." Evan took a step back, struggling to find the right words. "I don't know what's real anymore. You say you want normal, but you're living in a world I'll never touch. You have an empire waiting for your word, and I fix old engines in a dusty garage." "Evan, please," she said softly. "It's not how you think. I wanted to be seen as a person, not as a company's face." "With you, I felt that again." He shook his head. "It's hard to believe you didn't play me. Maybe I was just another project to fix for the weekend." Her eyes grew wet, but she did not look away. "Never played you. Everything I felt was real. I just didn't want the truth to ruin it." The silence between them grew heavy. Evan finally said, "I think I need some air." He turned and walked out of the hall. The sound of the lake returned, soft and distant. Claire watched him go, her hands trembling slightly at her sides. Evan kept walking until he reached the edge of the pier. The wind off the water cooled his face, but did not ease the twisting inside him. He stared at the horizon, thinking of the stories she had told him, wondering which parts still belonged to the real her. Behind him, he heard faint footsteps. Claire had followed, but stopped several steps away. She did not call his name. She just stood there, hoping he would turn around. He did not. The sun slipped lower and the golden light spread across the quiet lake. Both of them stood apart, caught between truth and trust. Evan knew he should leave, but a small part of him still wished the weekend could have stayed the simple thing it began as. Claire wiped her eyes, whispered something he could not hear, and walked back toward the resort alone. Evan looked once more at the reflection of the fading sky before heading in the opposite direction. Something precious had cracked between them, and neither one knew how to fix it yet. Evan did not sleep well that night. He lay on the bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the faint sounds of rain tapping against the window. His thoughts kept circling the same question. Had Claire really meant what she said, or had this been another game of the rich and lonely? Everything that had felt sincere now seemed uncertain. He had built his life on truth and hard work, and now that simple ground under him felt shaken. By morning, he had decided he would leave. The weekend was supposed to be just a short break, and it had already stretched beyond his comfort. He packed his small bag, folded his shirt carefully, and opened the door to go. Outside, a gray fog covered the resort grounds. The lake looked quiet and pale. As he walked down the path toward the parking area, a voice called out behind him. "Evan, wait." He turned. Claire was there. She looked tired, her hair still damp from the mist. There were dark circles under her eyes, as if she had not rested either. "You don't have to leave like this," she said. "I think I do," he answered. "You have your world, I have mine. We don't belong in the same story." She stepped closer. "Please, just let me talk." Evan sighed but stopped walking. "You had your chance to talk before," he said quietly. "You should have told me the truth." Claire pressed her hands together. "You're right. I was wrong to hide it, but I wasn't trying to fool you. I spend every day in rooms full of people who treat me like I'm a title. I'm a position to them, not a person. When I came into your garage, you looked at me like I was just another customer. You weren't trying to impress me or get something from me. I hadn't felt that in a long time." He listened without speaking. She went on, her voice softer now. "I didn't plan any of this. Just wanted a weekend that felt normal. When I asked you to come with me, I wasn't thinking about work or status. I just wanted someone real beside me." Her words struck something in him. He wanted to stay angry, but he could see the honesty in her face. She wasn't playing a part anymore. "You could have trusted me," he said finally. "Should have," she agreed, "but I was afraid. Afraid that as soon as you knew, you'd walk away. And now I guess I made it happen by trying to stop it." They stood there in silence for a moment. A light wind moved across the water, carrying the scent of rain and pine. Evan ran a hand through his hair. "I don't know what to think, Claire. You come from a life I could never imagine. I fix broken parts of cars. You run a whole company that builds them. How are we ever supposed to fit together?" "By being honest," she said simply. "I don't need someone who understands business meetings. I need someone who looks at the world like you do. You make things work again. Maybe that's what I need too." He gave a small, bitter laugh. "You talk like I can fix more than engines." "Maybe you can," she said gently. They walked toward the pier without planning to. The air felt cooler now, and the sound of waves brushing the shore filled the space between them. Claire stopped near the edge, eyes shining with uncertainty. "Evan, I don't expect you to forgive me right now. But please believe me when I say everything between us was real. I wasn't pretending when we talked, or when we laughed by the lake. I haven't felt that free in years." Evan looked at her carefully. "You mean that?" "Yes, completely." He stared at the ripples in the water for a while before speaking again. "I guess both of us were hiding something. You were hiding who you are, and I was hiding how scared I am of losing something good once I find it." Claire took a small step closer. "Then maybe we don't have to hide anymore." He met her eyes, and for a long moment, neither of them looked away. The air carried a quiet peace that began to melt the tension built over the last day. "I don't know what comes after this," Evan said at last. "Neither do I," she said. "But I'd like to find out with you." He looked down, rubbing the back of his neck. Then, after what felt like a long silence, he nodded slowly. "All right. Let's start with a clean line. No secrets." Claire smiled with relief. The smile reached her eyes again, gentle and hopeful. They sat on the edge of the pier as the sun began to break through the clouds. The light spread slowly over the water. She rested her head against his shoulder, and for once no one was watching, no one was expecting anything from them. In that quiet moment, Evan began to see her not as the CEO or the woman who had hidden her truth, but as the person beside him who was just as lost and searching as he was. The weekend that had started with uncertainty now felt like a turning point. Both of them had peeled away their fears and pride. What was left was simple and fragile, but real. As the sun climbed higher, Evan's world felt different. Not perfect, not certain, but finally honest. Evan and Claire left the resort together that Sunday evening. The air was clean after the rain, and the road shimmered from the last bit of sunlight. Neither of them spoke much during the drive. The silence between them felt different now, softer, no longer heavy with confusion. Evan kept his eyes on the road, and Claire looked out the window at the passing trees. Every few miles she would glance at him and feel a quiet warmth that had replaced the distance from before. When they reached Brookvale, the sky had turned pink. Evan parked the car in front of his garage. The smell of oil and old metal greeted them the moment he opened the door. Claire stepped inside and looked around with a small smile. The broken engines and scraps of tools looked nothing like the polished walls of her office, yet she felt more at peace there than in any meeting room. "So this is where all the magic happens," she said lightly. Evan smiled. "If fixing cars is magic, then sure. It's not much, but it's home. I like it," she said. Ran her fingers over the hood of an old truck waiting for repair. "It feels honest." He nodded. Honest is important. For a moment they stood there quietly. The radio in the corner played an old tune through faint static. Claire looked around and said, "You know, I miss places like this. Everything in my life has become glass and metal. This place smells like memory." Evan raised an eyebrow. That's one way to describe it. Most people just call it motor oil. Her laughter filled the small garage, and for the first time since the truth had come out, they both felt the ease return between them. In the days that followed, they stayed in touch. Claire returned to the city while Evan went back to fixing cars, but something had changed. They talked nearly every evening. She told him about meetings and plans, and he told her about the customers who came in with stories of their own. Both lives were still separate, yet the connection kept growing. One Friday, a few weeks later, Claire drove back to Brookvale. The sound of her car rumbling into his lot made Evan look up from his workbench. She stepped out wearing jeans and a plain shirt, her hair tied back, no trace of the suit and heels version of her he had seen at the resort. He grinned. "Didn't expect to see you today? I had a little time off," she said. "Thought I'd come for a tune-up." He crossed his arms. "Your car looks fine to me. It's not the car that needed tuning," she said softly. She walked closer, and they both laughed quietly. There was no awkwardness this time, no pretending. Evan handed her a wrench. "You can help me if you really want to fix something." She looked at the tool and then at him. "You sure you trust me with this?" "It's only one way to find out," he said. They worked side by side, and though Claire was far from skilled, she seemed to enjoy it. Each small turn of a bolt brought another piece of conversation. She asked about how he learned to repair things, and he asked what made her choose to run the company instead of selling it. She explained that building something herself meant more than owning what was already finished. Evan understood that better than anyone. After they finished, they sat outside on a bench near the door. The sun dipped low and painted the streets orange. Claire turned to him. "There's something I want to show you next week. The company is launching a new model, and your name will be on it." He blinked in surprise. "What are you talking about?" She smiled proudly. "That design you drew up on a napkin for a simpler engine part. I gave it to our engineers. They said it was clever and practical. You helped inspire the new model. Wanted everyone to know where it came from." Evan shook his head with disbelief. "I just doodled an idea while waiting for my coffee." "Sometimes ideas like that change things," she said. He looked at her and realized that this was her way of saying she cared not through grand speeches, but through actions. When the next weekend came, Claire invited him to the city for the launch event. This time, he didn't feel out of place. Stood beside her as the covers came off a new car gleaming under bright lights. Porters took pictures, and Claire gave a short speech. When she thanked Evan for his insight and genuine spirit, the room filled with applause. He felt his heart beat fast but steady. After the event, she turned to him and asked, smiling, "Same time next weekend?" He laughed. "You planning to break another belt on purpose?" "Maybe," she said. "Or maybe I just want to be sure you'll say yes again." He looked at her with warmth in his eyes. "And yes, I'll be there." They drove back to Brookvale that night, the stars bright above the open road. When they reached his garage, the air smelled again of oil, pine, and a touch of promise. Evan turned off the car and leaned back with a soft grin. "Funny how one question changed everything," he said. Claire smiled, her eyes bright in the dim light. Sometimes the right question finds the right person. They stood together outside in the quiet night. Sound of crickets filled the air, and neither felt out of place anymore. Evan reached for her hand. She squeezed it once, firmly and sure. The story that had begun with a broken engine and a weekend invitation had become something steady and lasting. It was not born of wealth or class, but built from trust, rebuilt piece by piece, much like the cars Evan loved to fix. And as the night deepened, they both knew the road ahead would be full of work and surprises, but also full of something real, the kind of love that could run for a lifetime.